let us know that you're on social media, and we can engage off the webinar about things that are about the webinar. So fantastic stuff. Very, very quickly, just wanted to highlight a little bit about what Shorebird does. We do quite a range of services and for employers, all related to recruitment. We're not a HR consultancy, as many of you might think. Our main aim is to help HR and employers reduce their reliance on recruitment agencies, support them with the direct hiring strategies, and improve their employer brand. We've got three main concepts. We've got the attraction concept, we've got the manage concept, and we've got the support. What you've got on your screen at the moment is the attraction concept that we provide. All our clients require slightly different approaches to their applicant attraction strategy, and obviously this can also change from vacancy to vacancy, so it's not really a one-size-fits-all. So what I've tried to do there is just highlight a few of the areas where we do most of our business, and that's in career sites, job boards, social media, and mobile. So essentially what that means is that we're advertising, promoting, and pulling candidates into wherever those candidates need to be at the most cost-effective and time-effective way possible. So I'm not going to go through all of the different areas in too much detail, but we can build career sites, we can promote, we can help you with the SEO, we can look at what is the best domain name to have maybe for your career site. Job board advertising, we do buy in bulk, huge amounts of bulk from the job boards themselves, so we can get those rates down for you a lot cheaper than what you might be able to do if you went direct to those job boards. Candidates don't even know we exist on the job board. It's all in your brand, it's all in your name. Even when the candidate applies, they still think they're applying to your organisation. Social media, it could be training. It could be publishing your jobs onto social media sites like LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter, but ultimately to have that conversation about your social recruiting strategy would be able to direct where we would take that further. And also with the mobile side of things, over the last 12 months, seen that increasing dramatically. I did a webinar last week myself on mobile recruiting. If you want to see that, or you want to sort of get some ideas from it, then please give me a mail or send it in the chat to say that you'd like to see it, and I'll send you the recording through. Okay, so that is about our Shorebird Attract. Hopefully that's just enough information and not completely bored you silly. But ultimately I'd love to have a conversation with you, a little bit more detail if there's something on the cards that you'd like to discuss. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Joanne. Thanks ever so much for listening. I'm sure there's a lot to get out of this. It is a very popular webinar indeed. And I'll give you some news after the webinar. So welcome, Joanne.
Many thanks, Liz, and thank you all for joining me this afternoon on, as Liz says, a very, very popular webinar, which is really interesting. It's a very popular area of our management training that we do, so it doesn't surprise me that so many people have enrolled to join us today. So for those of you who have been to a webinar before, welcome back. For those of you that are new, my name is Joanne Vose. I have an HR consultancy, Red Elephant HR, and I also have a training and development company, the Business Springboard, where we specialise in management and leadership development. A key part of that is that myself and Nigel, who manage the company, and any associate trainers that we do, we have a key focus that all our trainers are actually practitioners as well as trainers. So the stuff that you're receiving in the training course is actually real life. We do it every day and we live it and breathe it, which I think is very important in the training arena. So we're not looking for textbook training. We're looking to give people actually real tangible skills that we can measure and take action on and actually have a difference in the workplace. We have a number of different things that we do, many different training programs, but giving feedback is actually, it forms part of our management leadership development program that we run over 5 days, a 5-day program that we primarily run in-house. We have done a couple of open courses before, but this part of management development is always very, very popular. So actually in the given feedback, we've set up some pop-up courses in doing just that, just doing a small half-day session, primarily with managers, smaller business owners, etc., but mainly that middle and new management level of people who join us to learn more about how to give feedback. I think it's a really interesting topic that it's a lot of management skills that we sometimes just presume that somebody's promoted into management and suddenly they can give feedback, just like we presume suddenly they can interview and suddenly they can do a disciplinary. Well, there's some skills there that we need to give them to be able to allow them to do it effectively. So it's what we aim to do within our training. So the usual copyright and disclaimer in what we do. The information that I give you isn't specifically designed to help you with a particular problem that you have, and the copyright is with the Business Springboard. So, I say putting together a webinar, those of you who've been on my webinars before will understand that I try to cram as much in as possible so I can physically squeeze into my half hour. And this one wasn't an exception to that. In fact, I found this very quite tough to break things down to give you some really useful information over the next half hour. But what I would say is that what I've tried to do is give you an insight into what we can expand further on in training, but hopefully give you something you can take away with today. Now, looking at the range of people who've joined us on the webinar, I do understand that we've got a lot of HR people on there, and a couple of non-HR people. I think hopefully everything we're going to discuss is relevant for all, but particularly to HR people. If there are managers within your organisation that you feel would benefit from actually listening to the webinar, it can be accessed again through Shorebird. But also if that's something you would feel your managers would really benefit from having some more in-depth training on them, by all means have a chat with me. I'd love to discuss that further. So what we're going to run through today, as in our whistle-stop tour of feedback, is looking at, firstly, who should give the feedback. And I really think this is a good starting point to look at. And it's interesting when I'm working with organisations of who they choose to give any formal feedback. Please be aware as well, when I talk about feedback, I'm talking about positive and negative feedback, which I'm going to come on to about the differences between the two. But we're not just talking about when things go wrong and when people need to be told that their performance perhaps isn't where we want it. We're talking a lot about positive feedback as well. Often, as a human race, something that's really neglected. We're not good at saying nice things in general. I think that's quite fair to say, wherever that may be, to say thank you for a job well done, how you do that. And I think a lot of the time looking at children gives me a lot of insight, because children are kind of raw people, I see them. And a lot of their behaviour we can see of how we can intervene and have a change, and we can apply this to other settings. And even with children, you know, it's that classic, and now there's a big slant on parents rewarding positive behaviour to get more of it. And again, it seems like common sense, but it's really, really effective, and that's what we want to look at the workplace too. But whatever feedback it is, as a race, we seem to quite have difficulty giving this information. So I'm going to look at who should give that feedback and obviously why we give feedback. I'm then going to run through the difference between constructive feedback and praise and criticism, because these are very different things, but more importantly, will get you very different results. And quite often, I find where the issues occur is that we give in more praise and criticism rather than constructive feedback. I'm going to have a brief look at some types of feedback, and then the tools I want to give you at the end is to think more about the content, manner, timing and frequency of feedback that you give. As Liz said, please do use the chat box as we go through. It's there for you to communicate with me. There is a separate we're not running the questions box today, sorry, but we do have the chat box, so if there's anything on there that you want to ask as we're going through, by all means bring it up. Anything you want to share with the other people on the webinar, that's what it's there for, and it's really good to get some feedback from you guys. Alternatively, at the end we will have a separate question and answers session if anybody wants to ask anything particularly then. Okay, so this question of who. So interesting that as an HR consultant, when I work with some organisations, I can often be asked to give the feedback myself. Now, my view of what I do, I actually help managers to manage their people. Some organisations would like me to do it all for them, which, while it's a nice piece of work to do, it's not really where I'm coming from. I think it's about developing them. And I have actually had situations where we've had to do a dismissal in a probationary period, so quite straightforward dismissal, and I've turned up to join the manager to do it, and the manager's actually took a day's holiday, and I've ended up doing it myself, which is all well and good, and that's what I'm there to do, but at the end of the day we really need to think about who has to give this feedback. Now that's an extreme example of when somebody's actually leaving the business, but in general when they're there, managers have to build their credibility as a leader, and some of the components being accepted in a leader is to be fair and obviously be able to give that feedback to people. So I really think that the person giving the feedback should be the person's direct line manager, be that positive or negative. Now, there's other things that we can add on that will influence that, but that person needs to be involved in the process. So things like, having another person there, perhaps a more senior manager or an equal manager, or somebody from the HR department. We carry a lot of weight as HR people. There's nothing worse than an HR person walking through the floor with a brown envelope. Everybody is shaking in their boots. But no, in all seriousness, to have somebody else there can carry the weight of that feedback, be it positive or negative. It can just have a little bit more influence. So I think before we look at how we give the feedback, we've got to look at who gives the feedback. And my advice primarily there would be the person's line manager, but have other people in there depending on how much more influence you want to give. For example, a job really well done, it's always nice for somebody very senior in the organisation, even the MD, to just pass on their regards as well. It can really make a difference in that performance. And does it make a difference? Well, yes, is the main answer. It will make every difference. People perform better when they know exactly what they need to do, how they're going to do that, and what consequences it's going to be for both poor and negative performance. So we need to tell people where they get to. Now, not only practical, as they're going to make a difference, but also I'll put my HR legal hat on, and of course, legally there needs to be some difference in there as well. We need to be consistent in the message that we give, and really giving somebody negative feedback about their performance shouldn't be a shock. If we've got to where there's a serious issue with somebody, as management team, we haven't really fulfilled our duties by not bringing it up earlier down the line. So really, quite serious or a hard discussion about performance shouldn't be a shock. There should be some lead up to that. And legally, if you're in tribunal, for example, an unfair dismissal case because they'd been dismissed